Good evening. You are tuning in to AWANI Tonight with me, Cynthia Ng. Malaysia Day celebration kicks off in Sabah. We take a closer look at the Prime Minister's call for the people to come together as Luarga Malaysia and KPMG to settle with government over 1 MDB. That's coming up. Langkawi reopened to domestic travellers for the first time in months under Malaysia's first tourism bubble initiative. Some 1,500 people flew into the island today on 8 flights, while others entered by land.
Tourism Minister Datuk Sri Nancy Shukri, who welcomed the first batch of tourists who arrived at Langkawi International Airport, said about 30,000 people are expected to visit the island this month. The Langkawi Development Authority, meanwhile, projected that some 400,000 tourists are expected to visit Langkawi by the end of the year. Meanwhile, Health Director General Tan Sri Nur Hisham Abdullah said 5 positive cases were detected among tourists during COVID-19 screenings prior to them boarding a ferry or flight bound for Langkawi earlier today. All 5 positive cases were Category 1 and asymptomatic. They were subsequently given a 10-day house surveillance order. The government said it plans to implement tourism bubbles in other destinations with easy exit and entry points like islands, although this depends on Langkawi's pilot project.
KPMG Malaysia has agreed to pay a settlement of 333 million ringgit to resolve all claims related to its fiduciary duties in auditing the accounts of 1MDB for the period of 2010 to 2012. In a statement, the Ministry of Finance said the settlement will conclude the civil suit filed by the government in July this year against KPMG and that KPMG will expedite the payment. The Ministry of Finance added that the settlement was valued at more than 800 times the audit fees earned by KPMG. Now, starting tomorrow, gyms in states under Phase 2 and 3 of the National Recovery Plan will reopen. This is only for those who are fully vaccinated against COVID-19. Deputy Youth and Sports Minister Datuk Sri T. Lianke said operators must also be fully vaccinated before premises can open. He added that his ministry is preparing additional SOPs for gyms and sports facilities. Addressing concerns of ventilation in premises, he said that the matter had been worked out with the Ministry of Health. As we celebrate Malaysia Day today, we want to take a closer look at the concept of Luarga Malaysia or Malaysian family, mooted by Prime Minister Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri. What does it mean to be Luarga Malaysia and what do we want from it? Now, we asked Malaysian Unity Foundation trustee Tan Sri Lilam Tai.
Now, when we talk about the Malaysian family concept, it is one in which everyone, as long as he is or she is a Malaysian, it must be treated fairly. It must have equal opportunities, and it must be accepted as a member of the family. So to me, it actually means that it is a nation of Malaysians where we are able to respect each other, we are able to show our love and our concern for one another, and irrespective of whatever difficulties or challenges we face, we are all facing these problems as one Malaysian family.
Lee says Luarga Malaysia has a nice ring to it, but making it work requires togetherness, starting with acceptance.
We must start off with first, accepting, each other as Malaysians instead of basing it on our racial background. And as far as we are concerned, as I said, we are Malaysians first and last. Then, of course, there is also a need, for the government to always look into the question of how they can introduce policies that will be able to unite the people, because there are in the past, for example, certain policies being introduced which instead of uniting the people are in fact dividing them. So it is important that when making laws, when looking into the legislation, it is important that it must clearly adopt the strategy of accommodating the needs of the people. It must be able to listen to every sector of the population. So as far as this slogan of Luarga Malaysia is concerned, I think it is something which I think we are able to accept. But what is important is this Luarga Malaysia, the Malaysian family idea of helping to achieve unity must not just be a slogan, but on the contrary, it must be something that must be put into practice by the government. And it is also something that must be considered by all Malaysians.
It is time to let the young lead, says former UMNO MP Muhammad Taufik Ismail. As Malaysia's traditional power structure has been shaken up, he says now is the opportunity to reassess what works and what doesn't work for Malaysia.
The difference between 1963 and 2021 is our leaders then were much younger in age. The Tunku was the oldest at 60 years old. Tun Razak was only 41. My father was 48. Tun Fuad Stevens was 43. Stephen Kalong Ningkan was 43. And I think right now in 2021, we're led by people who should have retired a long time ago. If you look at other countries like New Zealand, Canada, France, they're led by much younger people. I mean, admittedly, they are Western countries, but there's no reason why Eastern countries should be led by very old people, because if you expect our young people to go out into the jungle and die for you in conflict, you must allow them to lead the country as well.
Taufik, who is the eldest son of Malaysia's second Deputy Prime Minister, Tun Dr. Ismail Abdul Rahman, said addressing the rakyat's grievances should be the main priority for all politicians, especially during the pandemic.
Overall, it hasn't been a very happy experience because in spite of declaring an emergency, the pandemic has not subsided. And I think people are very frustrated because they expected to see some improvement, but unfortunately they're disappointed. And I think the politicians have to concentrate on governing rather than on politicking.
Taufik also urged for more efforts to be put into bringing Peninsular Malaysia and East Malaysia closer.
Well, I hope that this Malaysia Day comes with a little bit more concern about how we can integrate ourselves with our eastern brethren in Sabah and Sarawak, because I think the gap between Peninsula and Sabah and Sarawak is much too wide. And when it comes to the pandemic, I think we can see that it affects everybody in all states, whether it's Peninsula or East Malaysia. And we have to reach our hands out to each other to help each other out of this crisis.
Historical narratives can be a powerful means of creating a sense of belonging. Thus, the history taught in our schools passed the test of inclusiveness. Tonight on Consider This, we speak to educationist Datuk Dr. R. Santiram about his book on the teaching of history, and that's coming up right after AWANI tonight. We will take a quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back. A group of Malaysians living in Sweden, Finland, Denmark and Norway came together this year to dedicate a song to all Malaysians in the spirit of Malaysia Day. Have a listen.
According to producer and director Zainal Fitri Abu Khair, the group chose Warisan by Sudirman because no matter how far they were from home, they wanted to preserve the Malaysian heritage.
Warisan, right? I mean, it means heritage, right? So I think one of the biggest, one of the main message that we want to convey, or one of the things, one of the main objectives that we want to achieve is to tell the world that, you know, even though we are far away from Malaysia, we're trying so much our best to preserve our tradition, our culture, and to remember where we are. I mean, living overseas, I mean, you are more inclined towards diluting your personality simply because there's so much kind of external pressure, right? I mean, things are being done differently here, and combined with the fact that there are not so many of you here, so many of us here. I mean, the tendency to forget who you are is so big.
This is the third year Zainal has produced a patriotic video to celebrate Malaysia Day. The difference in this year's video is that it involved Malaysians in 4 Nordic countries instead of just those in Sweden. Zainal and his family have been living in Sweden since 2008. One thing that keeps overseas Malaysians close together, he said, is a unique bond forged over their love of Malaysia and all its heritage, culture, language, food, and diversity.
We have Swedish friends, we have Danish friends, we have Norwegian friends, Finnish friends, right? But you cannot replace the Malay word kemesraan that you get when you have a Malaysian friend. You know, the kind of joke that you crack with a Malaysian friend, the kind of the stories that you share with a Malaysian friend, the connection and the connection that you feel is a lot greater.
The UK, US and Australia have announced a historic security alliance in the Asia-Pacific in what is seen as an effort to counter China. Under the deal, Australia will be allowed to build nuclear-powered submarines for the first time using technology provided by the US.
The new partnership, called AUKUS, was announced in a joint virtual press conference between US President Joe Biden, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson and his Australian counterpart Scott Morrison. The deal, one of the country's biggest defence partnership in decades, involves the sharing of information and technology in a number of areas, including intelligence and quantum technology. China has condemned the agreement, saying it undermines regional peace and stability. American officials have said the move was not aimed at countering Beijing. But all 3 leaders have repeatedly said Asia-Pacific security concerns had grown significantly. The pact has also frustrated France, which has now lost a deal with Australia to build 12 submarines. The move France won will push Europe to be more autonomous in its strategic planning.
And that is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. Get the latest news updates on COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines from astroawani.com and Astro Awani app. I'm Cynthia Ng. Thank you for watching.